And what makes us church, que nos hace una iglesia, will be in that direction. The bathrooms are located here at the entrance, in the hallway. And if you are here for the Latinos and Catholic schools, that is at St. Mary's. You still have time to make it over there, it's not here. And if you are with the youth and young adults, that's at the Pins Bowling Alley. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask myself or Ana. We'll be here for the remainder of the night. Thank you very much. Las clases, y si están aquí para las sesiones en español para inmigración, va a ser aquí en este salón. Y la sesión para recursos para los catequistas van a ser acá en este salón, y la sesión sobre qué nos hace iglesia va a ser acá. Los baños están aquí a la entrada, hay comida todavía, entonces por favor sírvense y bienvenidos a todos. Gracias.
I'd like to ask everybody to kind of migrate, to kind of get the migration mood up towards the front, so we can make it more of a conversation if possible. That's going to make it easier on the secretary staff to do their handouts too. Thank you.
Yes, you are.
If I can start out, I just want to thank Bishop Mike and the Diocese and Catholic Charities for giving me this opportunity, and tell you a little bit about my history with Catholic Charities, in particular Idaho. I came up here in 2000 at the request of Bishop Mike to help Marie Hoff, the first executive director of Catholic Charities of Idaho, to start an immigration program. It was the second program started at Catholic Charities, and the second staff person they hired was for that program. Anna Almarico, who I'm sure is well known to all of you. Anna, you're not here, are you? No, you're not. Okay. At any rate. And since then, I've come back and helped them with various things. And Clinic has had the great privilege of helping some of the very fine local immigration attorneys do immigration law trainings in this town, and particularly we work with Rocio Gonzalez, I think it was, right? On some of the immigration enforcement that was being done up here, and trying to help people with remedies to that. Tonight I want to talk about something that's sort of staring us in the face, which is comprehensive immigration reform. And I want to also speak about the other possibility. There are two distinct possibilities. When I started Clinic started advocating for comprehensive immigration reform in 1999, and for much of the time between then and last year, the conversation was, are we going to have comprehensive immigration reform? Well, that's no longer the conversation. The conversation now is, when will we have comprehensive immigration reform? It's virtual certainty that we will have this. Yet again, today, another poll was released that showed that a very substantial majority of Americans support this idea of comprehensive immigration reform. Which is not to say there aren't those who oppose it. But in general, it looks like we have sufficient movement that we will have some kind of comprehensive immigration reform. Well, if we don't have comprehensive immigration reform this summer, we will probably see something in its stead. We will probably see something called administrative relief. And so I will talk about that sort of in the same breath with comprehensive immigration reform. Administrative relief will basically mean that people get some sort of temporary status that comes directly from the President's power to grant that. We do have administrative relief currently, and is there anyone in the audience who'd be willing to say what that is? Anybody? What's that called? What's the current administrative relief that we have?
The deferred action
Deferred action,
for childhood arrivals.
which is abbreviated as?
DACA.
Excellent, 100 points. Well done. She's an immigration attorney, so she's cheating.
She cheated.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a marvelous program that has allowed something like 1 million kids. I'm sorry, no. 1 point. Yes.
Repeat for those of us who are not in the
Sure.
world.
Thank you, and thank you for calling me out on that. And if I say any jargon or terms that you don't understand, please raise your hand. Okay. Deferred action for childhood arrivals is something the Obama administration gave to a group of young people who the way society refers to them generally is dreamers. Okay. The dreamers are kids who came here and did not break the law. They were brought here by their parents, or they had to come here because their parents told them so. They had no, volition in this. They're completely innocent. So this group of people is able to get this special remedy, deferred action for childhood arrivals. And it's a substantial group. It will be a total of something like 1.7 million or 1.9 million people. Currently, something like 1.1 million are eligible. Last number I saw was something like 600,000 had applied. Does that sound about right to any of you immigration types? Okay. So this is a program that's been very helpful to kids because otherwise they were completely living in the shadows. They'd go through high school and then they'd hit a wall. They couldn't go to college, or it was very hard to go to college, and they couldn't get a work document, so they couldn't work, at least they couldn't work in an official capacity. And so it was a very difficult situation for them, and the Obama administration created this remedy in June of 2012, and it's about to be renewed. They've just issued a new form and new regulations. So that's an example of administrative relief. And so we could see something like that if we don't see comprehensive immigration reform. So let me get going on my talk. And you can ask me any question, you can make any comment anytime, okay? In fact, I prefer it that way. So Clinic is the outfit I work for. It's the Catholic Legal Immigration Network. That's why we call it Clinic. It's easier to say than that mouthful of words. It's a national group. It's an umbrella group that provides technical support to mainly Catholic charities groups. Sister Rosemary down in Twin Falls. Catholic Charities here, Nampa. Those are the sorts of groups that we support. We answer their questions. We have a toll-free number that people call. We take their email asking immigration law questions. We give a lot of trainings. We do a lot of webinars. We have in-person trainings. We have multi-week trainings we call e-learnings. We do all sorts of things like that. We help groups like Catholic Charities to organize coalitions, to move forward on things like, is that Lisa? It is Lisa. Hi, Lisa. At any rate, so we do all sorts of things to help people and help the church in particular make concrete the Gospel of Matthew. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. So this is something that comes out of the national Catholic structure in Washington, D.C. We used to be directly part of the United States Catholic Conference of Bishops. Now we're slightly independent, but we're still very much focused on the national Catholic structure. So that's Clinic. Why should the church care about immigration? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about where CIR and administrative relief are, what the impact of the Senate bill would have been, and then some other bills that are not so nice. Why is comprehensive immigration reform and administrative relief good for Idaho, and then how to prepare for CIR. So that's our agenda. And I do not intend to keep you here until 9 o'clock. You'll be delighted to hear. Clinic has 250 affiliates. I'm happy to say that 30% of them are now other than Catholic. We have opened up our membership to other than Catholic groups, which I think is a good example of our bishops in effect welcoming the stranger. Because Clinic is a unique niche agency that provides this level of tech support that no other national network does. And so we are allowing, with the permission of the local bishop and Catholic charities, other groups to become Clinic members. I told you all those things, so go on that. It's important to remember that this church, this Catholic Church, has been the greatest engine of immigrant integration. In other words, of welcoming the stranger, of going beyond the idea of the melting pot, of really valuing the contribution of immigrants, refugees, and asylees, ever since the first diocese in the United States. There is no entity that is anywhere near the Catholic Church. This goes to the history of the Catholic faith in the United States. I'm sure many of you are aware of the fact that the Catholic Church, out of necessity, created its own schools, created its own hospitals, created many of its own institutions because there was a very strong amount of discrimination perpetrated on the people of the Catholic faith in the early part of our history. It is a great blot on the history of the United States. Nevertheless, we have this wonderful reaction of the Catholic Church of, okay, we're going to do this. And so all these institutions were created to welcome people from Ireland, from Germany, from Spain, from Italy, from all these heavy immigrant-sending countries, as we've seen, one wave of immigrants come and go. And that's an amazing thing. So this idea of immigration to the church is not alien. It is really part of the fabric of what the Catholic Church is in the United States. It's very American. And it comes from it comes from the Old Testament, it comes from the New Testament. I talked about that at a talk earlier today. Of course, the Gospel of Matthew was always, sort of at the forefront. Today, I was reading an article. Every day I Google comprehensive immigration reform. And today I saw that Representative Gutierrez of Illinois, who is probably the leading voice for comprehensive immigration reform, certainly in the House of Representatives, said this about if we don't get CIR, he wants Obama to give us administrative relief to, quote, free 11 million from the tyranny of a broken immigration system. So that's, Representative Gutierrez. Here you can see I'm pointing out that in the Civil War, after the Civil War, 4 million people emerged from the terrible, terrible status of slavery. And I don't mean to equate being undocumented with being a slave. Obviously, being a slave is much worse, much, much worse. But they are both very oppressive situations. When you are undocumented, you're subject to all kinds of severe exploitation, fear, and suffering. So the fact that the church is Foursquare, oh my God, Sister Rosemary. Can we have a hand for Sister Rosemary? A force of nature. You can never be sorry, sister. Thank you so much. I had no idea you were coming. I'm honored, very much so. So, this is the right place to be. What did we have in the Senate last summer? Right about now last summer, we had this legislation. We saw compromise between the Democrats and Republicans. We saw people working together. We saw something we don't see in the Congress of the United States very much anymore. And it was a beautiful thing. And so we had this thing passed with a very strong vote, which was the Senate bill, and it did all these things. It reformed family-based, it reformed employment-based immigration programs. It provided this key thing here, an earned path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. It also, the trade-off was it made it a lot worse on the border. Basically what it did was to militarize the border. Kind of a sad state of affairs. But that's the nature of horse trading. So we had that, and we had high hopes. We all thought, okay, this is going to happen. We just need to see the House move forward. We had the Gang of Eight, and then Raul. You all know Raul, don't you? Close personal friend, I said. At any rate, Raul decided he didn't like the Gang of Eight, so he left. So it became the Gang of Seven, and then it completely exploded and became the Gang of None. The Democrats tried, some grandstanding, didn't go anywhere. There are various things that have been introduced, they haven't gone anywhere. We have gridlock. This act, the SAFE Act, fortunately I think got shot down. It basically would have taken immigration law and made it a state matter. Kind of unusual because, of course, immigration is a national issue. It is a federal issue. It doesn't matter what they say in California, where I'm from, what they say in Idaho, where you're from, what they say in Colorado, where I was born. It's a national matter, and so it's best decided with national policy. This didn't go anywhere, which is fortunate because let's just look at the bottom bullet here. What about someone who transports or harbors a person with knowledge that the person is undocumented? What if Sister Rosemary takes in somebody who has been in a car crash, knowing they're undocumented, and nurses them back to health? Does that then make Sister Rosemary a criminal? I think it would, and I think that most of us would agree that's a bad thing. This man controls the future of immigration in the United States, immigration policy. He is everything. And if he allows a vote to happen, something would pass fairly quickly. We know that because we know there are many people, we know the Democrats are fairly unified for it, and we know there are enough Republicans who say, yeah, this is a good thing. They want comprehensive immigration reform. It would probably pass. So he's got the power. If the Senate bill goes through or something like it, it would modify the current system of verification of people's work documents. It would give us a quicker, more sane family-based immigration program. We would lose some classifications like the siblings of U.S. citizens. The border would get beefed up. Farm workers would have more rights. There would be a farm worker program to bring them in. I don't want to use the word bracero because that has a negative freight that it carries with it. Dreamers would be taken care of, and expeditiously at that. There'd be a path to citizenship. There would be penalties for notarios, and there would be immigrant integration. And immigrant integration is really what it's all about. That's what those of us in this room who care about welcoming the stranger are all about. We want to have immigrants become part of us. We want to accept their gifts as well as giving them the rights and responsibilities that come with becoming part of these amazing United States of America. Here are some of the ways that comprehensive immigration reform or administrative relief help Idaho. You have these big, and I apologize if I've got your top industries mixed up or if I left any out here, but you have these industries, most of whom are either dependent on or have a large slug of people working for them that are undocumented. And the lack of documentation makes this workforce less stable. Two of the people we had hoped to see here tonight are from the Idaho Dairymen's Association, and we asked them to come, and they said, no, we can't come. We're in Washington, D.C. lobbying for comprehensive immigration reform. That's really what it's all about. That tells you that they get it, that they need a stable workforce. This will help Idaho communities. The majority of the studies show that having lawful immigration status, either at that baseline of deferred action for childhood arrivals, which is a temporary 2-year thing, or as someone who has a green card, lawful permanent residence, or as someone who has become a citizen, all of those stabilizing immigration statuses help you. They make your financial outcomes greater, your health outcomes better. That's good for all of us, right? If immigrants have good health, then that's less of a burden on the healthcare system. They increase family stability. We are all for that. They increase base institution stability, and that immigrants will probably attend more regularly when they're not worried about getting stopped on the road, as well as they will tithe more heavily. They increase educational outcomes. The documented children of documented families always have higher educational outcomes. And so, do they help immigrants? Yes. But they help all of us who aren't immigrants. They help make for stronger communities, stabler communities, more thriving communities. Let's look at families of Idaho. Mixed status families are families where you have people with different statuses. Let's say there's someone with deferred action for childhood arrival, a temporary status. Maybe the mom has a green card, and then maybe the father is undocumented. That's an example of a mixed status family. And then maybe there's a child who was born here, right? So you have all these different immigration-related statuses. Okay, that's a mixed status family. This CIR, or administratively, will change that for many or all, so that everyone has some form of documentation. That will make that Idaho family more stable. That's a good thing for all of us. That's a good thing for all of us that want our kids to be in a school where the other kids are from a stable home setting. Let's look at Idaho kids. CIR, Comprehensive Immigration Reform, Administrative Relief, gives you less tension in the family because it's not mixed status. It's basically everybody has some status. The parents are starting down a road to citizenship. They're invested in the United States. They learn English. They learn civics. They want to become citizens. Once they become citizens, they vote. This is all part of this immigrant integration matrix, if you will. That's all good for Idaho kids. Let's look at the Reagan legalization back in 1986. And then let's also look at deferred action for childhood arrivals, because we've just been through that the last 2 years. We've learned some things from both of those. And we're going to do CIR and administratively better because of that. The Immigration Reform and Control Act, or IRCA, Immigration Reform and Control Act, was a program that had a legalization component and then 2 farm worker components. People call it amnesty. I'm fine with that. That program allowed 3 million people to come out of the shadows and get status. That was a massive effort, led, I'm proud to say, by the Catholic Church. We did most, from the nonprofit side, we did most of the work for low-income families. The private immigration bar, the American Immigration Lawyers Association. How many AILA members do we have here tonight? Okay, 3. Good. That's a good outfit. The clinic works with them all the time to try and help immigrants and get good policy. Anyway, between the private immigration bar and the Catholic Charities programs and then a few others, we were able to get 3 million people through that process. Now we're facing 11+ million people, so it's a little scarier. We know that it's good to plan. I'm involved in California with a group that's planning just for California, because California has 25% of all undocumented people in the United States. And I'm a little sad to say that we've surveyed 180 low-income serving immigration nonprofits. And of the 180, only the Catholic programs seem to be really preparing for comprehensive immigration reform seriously. And that is, on the one hand, I can be proud of that proud of the Catholic Church. I'm proud of what we're doing. On the other hand, I'm very scared because each one of those 180 low-income immigrant serving agencies should be working hard on this. These are some of our mantras, which is, we have to grow our network, and at Clinic we're hard at work at that. We want people to plan. We want them to do public education right now. And then what we've learned from IRCA is you have to expect the unexpected, which is to say you want to have more resources than you think you'll need, and you want to be ready to be fluid and nimble and change. So some of the things we learned from DACA are that there was a lot of social networking, Facebook, Twitter, those sorts of things. Obviously, we're talking about a younger group, right? These are kids up to, I think you can be up to 31, not 31 or older. And you would have had to enter 5 or so years ago. I don't know the details. But at any rate, these were young kids, basically. We needed a stronger infrastructure than we had. We did notice that the field, Catholic Charities of Idaho, etc., informed the advocacy that we did with the Citizenship and Immigration Services to make it better. We focused a lot on best practices, and we view this as our sort of dry run for CIR. If you feel good about what happened in your office, for those of you that were practicing for DACA, then you're probably going to feel good about CIR. You just have to multiply yourself times 5, no problem. Although, the Catholic Church does oppose cloning, so I don't want to be seen as endorsing cloning in any way, shape, or form. Here are a bunch of little tiny dots on the map. And these are the sort of clusters of where nonprofit, low-income serving immigration services are. Sister Rosemary's dot is extremely big at the bottom of Idaho because it has Sister Rosemary. It's the biggest dot in Idaho for obvious reasons. At any rate, you can see that you folks in the Northwest, in the Intermountain West, I guess, we're in the Intermountain West? Okay. Northwest? Well, you folks can settle this later. Anyway, you're in Idaho. Anyway, you can see you need help. You don't have enough resources. Clearly, there's a need for greater resource here. On the other hand, there's other parts of the country, like Nevada, that are even worse off. So this is our recipe for how you would prepare for comprehensive immigration reform. And this is directed mainly at charitable agencies, okay? We have a couple here. Some are just getting into this. I think some of you may be thinking about this. I also would suggest that you think about this in a little different way. You think about maybe your parish becoming either an agency or an arm of an agency. So you might be a site for Catholic churches to do some of the things we're talking about here. And I think the private practitioners in the room aren't going to be damaged by this information either. So you want to get some sort of control or information. You all know your Spanish language radio stations and your Spanish TV station. You want to be on a first name basis with those people, and you want them to turn to you. You don't want them turning to notarios. Unless I'm mistaken, if you're a typical Spanish language market, notarios do advertise on both the radio and on, yes? Thank you. He wants to know what notario means. I will turn to my colleagues in the audience. What's a notario?
Someone who...
Hold it. Someone who? Let's get this on tape.
A notario in Spanish-speaking countries, for example, Mexico, are by training attorneys and attorneys of well-established reputation. And so largely Latin American immigrants come to this country and confuse notary publics, which is the direct translation of a notario, as being of the same kind, and so resort to these storefronts that advertise themselves as notarios for legal information and legal advice, when in fact a notary public in the United States does not have typically legal training. It is not authorized to practice law. So in a sense, they are individuals who are practicing law without license and causing large amounts of damage.
Right. And in fact, if you talk to the average Board of Immigration Appeals accredited representative, who will tell you what that is in a minute, or immigration attorney, who you just heard Monica talking as, you will find that a lot of the tears and anguish are spent repairing the damage of notarials. I tell you, my wife is an immigration judge, and part of the reason I do what I do is I have to listen to Laura Ramirez come home every day and tell me about these innocent, nice people, families who end up in her court. And the reason they're there, did they do anything bad? No, they saw some guy's sign that said work permit, INS, and they went in, or CIS, and they went in and the person took $1,000 or $2,000 or many thousands of dollars from them and had them sign something which was in a language they didn't understand, and told them this is a work permit application. Well, it turns out frequently what they were doing was signing an application for political asylum. And so when they actually go to their appointment at the asylum unit and they start talking about it, they look at the asylum officer and they have no idea what they're talking about, because of course they didn't apply for asylum, and they have no idea what's going on, and they get turned down for asylum, and the next stop is immigration court. And so that's a very sad situation. The government attorneys don't particularly want to have that person there because they're going up. Yes, do you want to say something?
Oh, I just wanted to add that it's important to note that immigration court is deportation proceedings.
Right, thank you.
It actually is invoking a person to leave the United States under order of the U.S. government with
Right.
penalty of consequences for failure to depart.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, she just pointed out that immigration court is where you get deported, or now we say removed, okay? And that when you go into immigration court, or even if you ignore the court orders you deported, there are serious consequences. You have to leave the country, or you get actually physically removed from the country. If you ignore that order, you just make it worse for when they finally catch you. So this is a very serious thing. These people end up in immigration court, and even the most kind-hearted judge, which would be my wife, can do absolutely nothing for those people. And it's very frustrating for her. It's frustrating for her. It's frankly frustrating for the government attorney as well, because the government attorney is there to deal with serious immigration matters, people who've committed serious crimes and things like that. And they don't want to have these people who've just been swindled and had their money stolen by a notarial. Yes?
One thing that we've noticed as well is that practicing law, unauthorized and authorized practice of immigration law, sometimes it's intentional that they're doing a bad job, and sometimes it's not intentional. Because we've seen where it's the neighbor lady who may have done okay work for one of her friends. And so she's assuming she can do that same okay work for another friend. So she's not charging anybody, she's doing somebody a favor. However, for this second friend, that person had a totally different story, totally different history and background, and the outcomes will not be the same. So we're seeing a lot of, unintentional ways of hurting their community by trying to do a favor, trying to fill out a form, and immigration work is not filling out forms, and we say that time over and over and over again. We don't even answer questions over the phone. They need to come in for a full consultation. So, that's something that we pass on to parish secretaries, we pass that on to caseworkers at Head Start programs, is just don't fill out any forms. Send them to an immigration attorney, send them to Catholic Charities of Idaho, but don't practice unauthorized immigration law by trying to do somebody a favor.
Thank you. And I just want to point out, you all got a handout, which is the Catholic Charities referral list, right? And I think that's an outstanding referral list. I wanted to say, I noticed the most famous immigration attorney in Idaho is not on that list. Why isn't he? I guess Raul Labrador found some other job. Raul he was really down with the people when he was an immigration attorney. Now, it turns out the people he was representing are not, he says a lot of bad things about them. It's a funny thing. I wonder why Raul changed his tone. Okay.
Question?
Yes.
Is this a free service when an immigrant is looking to find? Okay, is this a free service that you're discussing now as far as notarios versus
No.
legal immigration?
No. Any well-run immigration program that I have anything to do with consulting with will charge low nominal fees
It's not
because
government supported.
it's not government supported, and the charging of fees in immigration is a little unusual for a charitable organization, but it is the industry norm. It is a best practice because without that, so much of the, probably 30 to 40% of the capacity, the immigration legal services capacity in the United States would just disappear overnight of the nonprofits.
If the government had been underwriting it, though, it wouldn't have.
If the government had been underwriting it, yes, there would be no problem. And in fact, the government just yesterday or the day before came out with a notice that they're going to give something like $20,000 per agency to 100 agencies, and that will hire a portion of an immigration attorney to represent children in removal proceedings. I would observe, and I think my colleagues on the private bar would say that $20,000 doesn't buy you a whole lot of an immigration attorney. Nonetheless, it's better than a poke in the eye with a blank stick, and we'll be happy to take it. Here are some of the things you'd want to do. You'd want to plan. You'd want to create a plan. Catholic agencies across the United States have created plans for our planning. That is unusual, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing they're doing it. It's not a good thing that they're the only ones doing it. I wish that all other agencies took comprehensive immigration reform administratively as seriously. I really do wish they took it seriously, because it is going to happen, and it's much better to have a plan. People should be reaching out to funders. Clinic does that all the time, and Clinic has a history of doing that, and we used to find that funders would not return our phone calls or our emails. Now funders return our phone calls and emails. Why is that? It's because funders are pretty smart, and they look around, and they see that we are at a hinge moment in our history. This is a big deal. We are about to see 11 million people emerge from the shadows and become part of this amazing country of ours. And that is something that charitable foundations are very tuned into, and they want to be part of, making sure that happens in a good way. Not in a random, haphazard way, not in a sloppy way, but in a very intentional and thoughtful way. And that means we're going to have good community-based agencies, parishes, private immigration attorneys, all working together to make this happen. And that brings me to my next slide, or the next bullet, partnerships. We're going to have to partner. And we're going to have to reach across to the local library, to the adult school, to the community college, to the little Catholic hospital in your town, or whatever. All of these institutions of society are going to have to be involved. Clinic now is involved with helping the Los Angeles Public Library System to put forward a proposal to get 3 of their 82 branches, Board of Immigration Appeals, recognized and staff accredited, so that the library can do this, okay? We're going to see a lot of new actors. Janie's point is very well taken. There's going to be a lot of well-intentioned people who can do a lot of damage if they don't find the right channels, if they don't work with a group like Catholic Charities, or like some of the other nonprofits in the state who have it. Yes, sir?
Well, I think you make a great point with regards to, you want to make sure, because there's going to be a lot of people with well intentions, but by the same token.
By the way, I'm Ivan Castillo with the Idaho Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, but the reason why I consider that to be really important for all of you guys is understand what your strategy is going to be from the marketing standpoint, because there's going to be a lot of not well so intended people that will actually go ahead and spend a lot of money making sure that the people will go through their channels. So, make sure that the Telemundos or whoever is the media base, and we know, at least for the Hispanic community, we know that we do everything through radio mostly, and then we watch the telenovelas or soap operas later, right? So I want to make sure that you have those partnerships. because it's going to be so instrumental, because then later on you're going to see a lot of people saying, oh, by the way, I ended up going with this person, which by the way was a notario, right? Which I want to just let, you know, Monica Salazar, she's doing a fantastic job, you know, making sure that notarios are actually, you know, understood that they don't have any of the legal powers that they do have in the rest of, you know, Latin America. So kudos to her because she's doing good. But, you know, make sure that you pay a big attention to that. How are we going to be noticeable, and how are we going to make sure that people understand that we are the place where people can come over and not have to worry about being taken advantage of. So,
Thank you so much. And you know, he's absolutely right. The biggest problem that we're going to face will be a problem of, oh, here I have to get the camera again, excuse me. I've never been videotaped before, so as you can see, I'm extremely nervous. The biggest problem that we are going to face is that the notarios, as this gentleman just mentioned, are extremely savvy business people, and they are going to dump a fortune on advertising. They're going to blanket the radio waves, they're going to blanket TV, and we're Catholic charities, we don't think that way, okay? That's not what we do. We have to think that way. We have to think like they think, we have to act like they act. We have to have massive public relations. Do we do it on the radio waves or on TV? Maybe, maybe not. What we do is we should be putting together a database in each of our parishes or each of our organizations of people we think might benefit from the legalization. Do we know they would or not? We don't. Do we keep the list, that little Excel file hidden away somewhere? Yes, we do. But when we get closer, we start sending messages to all these people saying, don't go to a notary, don't go to a notary. We inoculate them every month with that message. And we also tell them, Catholic Charities can do this for you. Here's some other channels, some private immigration attorneys who can help you, other good agencies in, La Posada, et cetera, all the good agencies that are on that list that Janie handed out earlier. So, yes, thank you very much for those comments. Volunteers is going to be huge. I'll get to that in more detail. So here's the community education piece. We've just sort of gone over that. There is no new law. Do not pay anyone anything, okay? Who can do this? The people that can do this are immigration attorneys and Board of Immigration Appeals and credit reps. They're the only people that can do this. Totally not. End of story. That's a message we have to send out. You can tell people to gather these things. We were going to be fortunate enough to have someone from the Consulado Mexicano, the Mexican consulate. He had a family emergency, he left, but he left a bunch of brochures about their programs. They're here. Please feel free. Actually, I'll just start passing them out. Thank you so much. Just take this. And so, you know, that's a very important thing for people to get. Of course, Mexico's not the only country that has people here. Guatemala, El Salvador, and the other, 150 countries in the world all have people in Idaho who may be undocumented. They need baseline identification documents. They would do well to put together where they lived, when they came and went. They would do well to take good care of their immigration or their employment, school records, their pay stubs, for instance. If they have had an incident where they, encountered law enforcement, they should get the record of that. Hopefully they don't have that. They should pay their taxes. They should pay back taxes. And they should start saving for the application fees and the penalties. And finally, we want them to become part of this country. And one of the keys to that is understanding the English language. Does that mean they have to leave their language behind? Absolutely not. We value their home language, and we want them to keep that and to give that to their children. That's one of the greatest gifts they can give. When you do your plan, you want to make sure everybody, we say leadership buy-in, it's really the entire agency or the parish or the community has to have buy-in to this plan, okay? Someone should be made to be the person where the buck ends up, because otherwise the buck keeps getting passed around. Somebody should be the lead in your parish, your agency, for a CIR plan, and that includes, and this is, something that a lot of us don't associate with charities, a business plan, okay? A business plan is a good thing because it helps you to see the future of your agency and your parish and where you're going and how to make that happen. We have a bunch of resources that are free and online at cliniclegal.org under Comprehensive Immigration Reform and our drop-down resources tab. Please utilize those. They are there. We put them there for you, all of you, so you didn't have to do those things. We have funding proposal templates. We have CIR plan outlines. We have a lot of this stuff ready to go. You would just plug things into those plans. You should be getting your act together and then going to see funders and talk to them about all of these things. The funders, if you educate them now, will be much more susceptible to actually write you a check, give you a grant when CIR rolls around, and that's important. And consider all funding needs, not just the legal services, so you may want to also include your English as a second language program or your financial literacy program. And then you want to tell funders, hey, guess what, this is a 15-year program. They may say that's too long for us, but they may be willing to get you going, and that's critical. This is an idea that we're seeing in California now, and I wanted to share it with you. I think it's marvelous. We have parishes in California where I don't think they're really much different than your parishes. I think your parishes have some mixed status parishes. There may be parishes that are 100% immigrant, there may be parishes that are 100% native born, but I think that's rare. I don't think that's what happens in the Catholic Church much anymore. I think most parishes are a combination of immigrants and native born. And in California, what we're seeing is the native born are looking at their new immigrant sisters and brothers and saying, oh, you know, they go to this language mass, generally Spanish language, although of course in California, Korean, Vietnamese, Chinese, we have all sorts of language masses. But they're looking at that, but they're realizing these people are our brothers and sisters. They are Catholics just like us, and we need to help them. That's what we do as Catholics. And so the native-born population is putting together a funding plan so that they can pay for what amounts to one Board of Immigration accredited representative or a portion of Board of Immigration accredited representatives, so that that parish sees to it that the needs of the newcomers, of the immigrants in their parish are going to be met. I think that's a viable model. I think it'll go viral, and I wanted you to be the first people outside of California to hear about it. One of the things that we didn't do in the Reagan legalization is we made a mistake as a movement. We had tunnel vision, and we focused on the biggest group out there that needed our help. They were Latinos, they were Hispanics. They're the people this whole convocation is talking about, okay? And it's good that we did that, but we made a mistake in that we forgot that there were our Asian brothers and sisters and our African brothers and sisters. And we are not going to make that mistake this time. We are going to learn from our mistakes. And so when you set up your program, when you do your outreach, make sure that you are reaching out to the entire community. Even those communities who may be somewhat, quote-unquote, invisible. Make the effort to reach out to them. You will be much happier once CIR is all over and those people have come forward and gotten status as well. I'm telling you some fairly obvious things about being inclusive, you know, all these things. These are some of the partnerships you're going to have to develop. As you can see, we have this nice laundry list. We have the consulado here, the consulate. This is a faith-based organization. Is the Catholic Church the only faith in Idaho? Is there another faith that's kind of big in Idaho? What's the name of that faith? Mormons. Exactly. So you would reach out vigorously to the Mormon Church and bring them in to the separate. There's everything to be gained from that. And then there are other faiths. There's the Lutherans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You want all of them working together. Business associations, we're very fortunate. We had somebody from the Idaho Chamber of Commerce. That was dynamite. I'm delighted he could join us. He gets it. And then libraries and labor unions. Just today, a Catholic priest was called upon to do the invocation at the AFL-CIO Idaho gathering. So you have the right connections to make this happen. Immigration attorneys, hugely important in the Reagan legalization, will be hugely important once again. 14,000 just in the American Immigration Lawyers Association. There are some who are not members of that group as well. So it's a very high number. You'd want to leverage your board members' affiliations. Here are some groups who might be, well, this is a slide done for you, obviously, with the Dairymen's Association and the hop growers. You have hops here, don't you? Right. Okay. And you have all sorts of agricultural products. You have a timber industry, etc.
Sugar beets.
Sugar beets? Okay, thank you. I should have known that. I'm from the Monterey area in the Salinas Valley. The Spreckles family grew a vast amount of sugar beets. That's where the Spreckles, most of their stateside sugar came from. Banks and credit unions, very important. And why are banks and credit unions an important partner? Anybody? Jane?
Because we don't want any of our families going to payday loan institutions to be able to get money or to pay for services.
So Janie's saying we're trying to protect them from this sort of predatory payday loan organization. That's a really big problem in California, the payday loan organization with a very steep rate of interest. I don't know if you have that in Idaho so much. Oh, you do, I see. I'm sorry to see.
We're the highest in the country.
Pardon?
We're the highest in the country for payday loans over the APR rate, the interest rate.
She just said that you have the dubious honor of being the highest in the country for payday loans and the APR rates that they charge.
About 500%, and we've seen cases up to 700% APR.
500 to 700% APR. That is just, it's terrible, it's criminal. And our answer to that is both to try and get the DA to go after them, and then further to create an alternative to make sure that Idahoans, be they documented, undocumented, native-born, immigrant, know about reliable institutions of credit, like banks and credit unions. Actually, there's on the display table over there, there's some brochures for a credit union. Cap Ed, I know nothing about them, but they saw fit to come to this thing. In California, we have a bunch of really interesting and sort of go-getter progressive credit unions. One that comes to mind is Something Federal Credit Union, and there, you look at their website and you would be convinced they were just a nonprofit. They just barely mention the fact that they have this loan program. But I mean, their whole thing is to help women, minorities, and people with disabilities, develop full parity in the credit system. This is a really huge opportunity for two reasons. A, we must give immigrants financial literacy. That's an important part of this whole package of immigrant integration. At the same time, we can benefit those institutions. They need new clients. They want to be on the front end of this. They want to help those people and have them as clients who they're able to keep for 20 or 30 years. And so this is a win-win situation. So that's those are organizations that we should be working with. I think those organizations might actually be willing to fund some of the grassroots, fund preparation of brochures, fund radio spots, that sort of thing. So I would definitely be talking to them. Legitimate tax preparers, ESL providers, colleges and universities. You have many fine colleges and universities in the state. They have a bank of bright young students who want to do things in the community. Please take advantage of that. You should be staffing up your agency, for those of you that have agencies, or you should think about what you can do in your parish to make this happen. You would look for all these things. And then you would give your staffer training in these things. And by the way, Clinic is the biggest provider of immigration law and immigration program management trainings, then we will be at your beck and call. I believe we're the only agency that's come to this fair city to provide an immigration law training. Has AILA ever done, has the big AILA ever come here? No, yeah, I didn't think so. Okay, so we have come here, we've done basic immigration. We did we helped Maria Andrade do an enforcement reaction training. And we're happy to do more of that. Let's talk about this last thing really quickly. Board of Immigration Appeals, BIA, recognition and accreditation. This is something that's really unusual and hard to kind of wrap your head around because, you know, I'm an attorney, my wife's a judge, she's an attorney, there's some attorneys here. We all have a special privilege to practice law, right? Pass the bar, all those good things. Well, in immigration law, it's not regulated by the state bars. It's regulated by the federal government. So the federal government can do whatever it wants, and it has created this special designation, Board of Immigration Appeals, accredited rep, which allows people with sufficient knowledge and experience of immigration law who have good moral character to practice immigration law. This is hugely helpful for the nonprofit world. It allows lay people, non-attorneys, to practice immigration law. And this is something in the clinic network that the majority of our programs only have Board of Immigration Appeals accredited reps. We have many fine immigration attorneys in our network, but the majority of the programs have Board of Immigration Appeals accredited representatives. This is a great utility. These people do a wonderful job, and they, you know, we have elaborate systems. My agency, for instance, provides toll-free immigration law support. Any of these people or any of the immigration attorneys in our network who have a question are welcome to call. We also let them email. We put on trainings for them. We do all of these things. So this is a very useful thing. And you should think about getting your staff this status if you don't have it. I know there's an agency here who has their executive director couldn't make it tonight because it's the Idaho what?
Community Council of Idaho.
Community Council of Idaho is working on getting the knowledge they need for this right now. Is there anybody here from, is it ICANN? Yes, ICANN. ICANN, back in the days of what's his name, about 8 years ago, you remember? Yeah, right. He was all go for this, and then he didn't quite go enough go. So, but at any rate, you guys have thought of that, and I'm sure you're thinking of it now. You should take care of that as soon as possible. So this helps strengthen the program. It made the third bullet is the key one. It authorizes the practice of immigration law. There are two ways you can practice immigration law. You can be an attorney, hopefully an immigration attorney, or you can be a Board of Immigration Appeals accredited representative. Those are the only two ways you can actually practice. Okay, so it's important that your agency get this. I'm very proud of the fact that the Catholic Legal Immigration Network has made this something that we spend a lot of time helping agencies with, and we will continue to do that. It's free, so like, why would you? Well, that's a little disingenuous in that you have to get a lot of training and experience before you do this. So you're going to have somebody where the buck stops. The volunteer coordinator is going to run the whole thing, vet the volunteers, have a training plan for them, make sure they get the recognition, bless you, that they are deserving, and generally make this machine a smooth running machine. I can tell you that the Silicon Valley Community Foundation in Santa Clara is currently creating a whole nebula, I guess you could say, of online Google-based tools that will allow you to recruit and supervise and monitor and do all those things with volunteers. In California, we're very fortunate in that we have a number of naturalization and DACA collaboratives, and they generally have such things. They have online Google folders where they have all the volunteers that have been recruited by all the agencies, and they share those volunteers across agencies. So that if there's a group processing happening in Fremont, California, all of the East Bay Naturalization Collaborative members can go up into that Google Cloud and send an email to all of those different volunteers and say, we're doing this thing, please come and join us. And that's very powerful and helpful. These are some of the things that Google tool will do. Silicon Valley Community Foundation is developing that, should be out pretty soon. You're going to have a bank of people to help you for the tough cases, or to just do a presentation at your monthly clinic about taxes. You would do well to build those connections right now. And then you want to, if they're good connections, you want to take advantage of them and solicit their participation in your group processing workshops. Voila, we have finished. Thank you so much. But I'm not done. If we have questions, let's answer them. Yes.
Share your question with the group, please.
Do those people serving under this BIA program, do they work within a law firm or something? Are they connected to or supported by or?
Sort of. A BIA accredited rep, they can't work for a private attorney. Private attorneys don't have that. But the Board of Immigration Appeals accredited rep works at a group like Catholic Charities. Catholic Charities is a recognized agency. Once you're a recognized agency, you may have Board of Immigration Appeals accredited rep. I want to point out that the board permits volunteers to get this. So if someone in this audience has a job and they do that, but they'd like to help out on a Saturday and they're willing to go through the training and stuff, they can conceivably do that and get accredited, and then help Catholic Charities do that. And I think we will see more of that sort of volunteering at a little higher level as we get into comprehensive immigration reform. Another thought.
But eventually, would they not have to connect with a regular immigration lawyer, or no?
No, her question is an excellent one, and it's a confusion many people have, which is they think, well, as a BIA accredited rep, you have to have a lawyer somewhere lurking. They have to have someone they can call, okay? So they can have a relationship with any of the very fine immigration attorneys in this room where they could call them, okay, and ask them questions. But that person wouldn't have to be supervising them, they wouldn't have to be their employee, okay? And by the way, this is a little bit of a fine distinction, but there are two levels of Board of Immigration accredited representatives. One can do anything that an immigration attorney like I can do with Immigration Services, now known as Citizenship and Immigration Services, formerly INS. The second level is the fully accredited representative. She can actually go into immigration court. My boss is Michelle Sardone. Michelle Sardone is a fully accredited representative and volunteers for a group called Mugar Hispano, which is a Catholic program in Arlington, Virginia. And she goes into immigration court. And in fact, at one point, she managed a squad of 4 immigration attorneys and 2 BIA accredited reps who went into immigration court all the time. So, a Board of Immigration Appeals fully accredited rep can do that. They can go into immigration court. Most Board of Immigration Appeals accredited representatives don't do that. For instance, if you were in Boise, that would be not so useful because I don't believe there's an immigration court here, or do you have a video conference, or do you have circuit riding judges? Tell us about what happens in immigration court in Boise. Thank you.
So I'm attorney Nicole Durden, I'm on that list, and the immigration court in Boise is actually a satellite of the Portland Immigration Court. We have master calendar, which are initial hearings on a twice a week basis that are telephonic, and then about every 2 to 3 weeks, the immigration judge will ride circuit and come to Boise for non-detained individuals only. So if we have a detained individual, that individual usually gets transported out of state, usually to Utah or to Washington. But we do have a really intense need for fully accredited BIA reps in Idaho. if I'm not mistaken, I believe that our reps are all partially accredited. I don't know of any of them that actually appear in immigration court. So one of our most dire needs with any type of immigration reform or immigration need is that only immigration attorneys appear in court in Idaho, because we don't have anybody that has the BIA full accreditation to do that for them.
Excellent, and thank you.
And I just wanted to clarify with Catholic Charities of Idaho, we do consult, we actually have a contractual relationship with an attorney. And I think that's just our agency standard to make sure that there is much minimal liability as possible to the families that we serve. So in addition to the support we receive from clinic, we also have a contractual relationship with an immigration attorney here locally.
Great, thank you both. Let me steal that back from you.
And I can tell you a little secret, immigration judges are really nice to BI accredited reps. I think it's because when they see one of us come into court and we're attorneys, the government attorney gets a little defensive sometimes, or their hackles go up, whereas if it's just a BI accredited rep, they tend to be a little more casual, and so everything calms down in immigration court. Yes, sir.
How long does it take to become one? How long does it take to become one of those?
Well, that's a great question. The board has a sort of unwritten standard of 40 hours of training, okay? The board also likes to see that the staffer has actually done some applications and has, good supervision and all of those things. It varies from agencies and it varies with people. It's sort of on a case-by-case basis. And I have I've had the privilege of assisting people with this since about 1992. And I have a hard time saying that there's, any hard and fast rule for how long it takes. I would say somewhere between 6 months to a year before someone would be put forward for BIA accreditation, working at a good community-based agency. I think that there's a lot to be said for volunteers taking the 40 hours that we think the board wants to see you get, and then maybe doing a little bit of work and applying. We're actually, thank you for your question, in California we're pushing through a class of about 50 representatives from about 20 agencies, a dreamer group, a group serving indigenous people from the Oaxaca state area of Mexico, several domestic violence groups, and then the usual, a bunch of Catholic Charities groups. We're pushing them through with an innovative online course. And we'll see, if the board accepts that. But now is the time to be aggressive and to move forward as quickly as possible. Clinic provides online training. Many of the people in this room have taken our training, so perhaps taken our webinars. We're the sort of the go-to source for the nonprofit world. In the profit sector, that would be the American Immigration Lawyers Association. They have a robust menu of outstanding online trainings and then in-person conferences and trainings. Is there enough immigration law training? Heck no. There needs to be a lot more. And once we get to CIR and administrative relief, the national groups like AILA, like Clinic, like ILRC are going to have to step up our game and push that much harder. Yeah, another question, just a minute.
Can you describe the multiple streams towards documentation and various routes that people get there and situations that they can be documented under?
I can certainly try.
Question was, can you describe the various kinds of documentation and the streams people use to get to that documentation?
What people are eligible.
Oh, what people are eligible for what things? Okay, help me out here, immigration attorneys. Immigration 101. It's a big question. The sort of the constellations of immigration relief, if you will, sound in things like family-based immigration. So in family-based immigration, just a minute, I'm off center here.
there. In family-based immigration, you show a nuclear family relationship generally, mother, father, child, husband, wife, that sort of thing. The exception being the siblings of United States citizens, okay? So if you show that with documentation, birth certificates, marriage certificates, those sorts of things, that establishes that first ability to have a relationship that would be sufficiently valued. You, the petitioner, has to have some form of status, generally being a U.S. citizen or a green card holder. There are some other statuses. For instance, you could be an asylee, you could be a refugee, and then there are statuses where the state, if you will, fulfills that role. There's a provision called the special immigrant juvenile for kids generally below a certain age who are no longer sort of with their family and for reasons family court, it'd be best if they got status here, okay? By the same token, there's a provision under the Violence Against Women Act that allows survivors of domestic violence to get benefits here with this sort of the state, if you will, acting as the petitioner. They show this tragic event that happened and they're able to qualify for that. There's other benefits that are sort of akin to that, like that arise out of being a victim of a crime, the U visa, for instance, or a victim of human trafficking, the T visa. And then there are immigration benefits for those who are fleeing, political persecution and get political asylum for a variety of reasons from their home country. We also have temporary protected status. That could be someone who's fleeing a war, a conflict, religious persecution, or even a natural upheaval, such as a volcano or a hurricane. There's also employment-based immigration, and that requires you to have, a willing employer who says, I have to have this employee and I can't find anybody locally to do this work. You see that in agriculture, the H-2A program. You see it in other forms of employment, the H-1B. And then there are a bunch of more exotic, we're getting really exotic here when we get to entertainers and, Sammy Sosa and people like that. I'm not going there, okay, we're not going. What have I missed? I got family, I got asylum. Here, Professor, is it Dearden?
Yes.
All right, Professor Dearden, enlighten us.
I actually got done teaching my first semester of immigration law this year at Concordia Law, and dedicated an entire semester to that question, and we didn't get near the detail that you need to discover. I generally explain to my students, foreign-born individuals, for the most part, have to have a reason to be in the U.S. That reason can be their family, that can be their employer, it can be protection under international law. Once that reason is established, the question is it a temporary reason? Is it a permanent reason? And does that reason lead them to a pathway to become a full-fledged U.S. citizen? As we all know, being born in the U.S. gives you the right to be a U.S. citizen. So, depending on the reason, you may have permanent, or you may have a temporary reason to be here. And you may have a pathway to citizenship, or you may have an expiration period that you have to leave. It's very complex. And in immigration law these days, talking about 11 million people that are undocumented, my experience is, at least in my private practice, is that many people have a reason. I have a sister that's a U.S. citizen, I have an employer that needs me, I have a child that's born here with an illness. What impedes the reason is that we have a very draconian system of punishments associated with unlawful entry or other violations of immigration law that makes it impossible for people to overcome those punishments that they may have committed 10 years in the past, 15 years in the past. Maybe this deferred action that we've been referring to over and over again, somebody brought me here, it was not with my own volition. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about reform. We're not talking about, we need more reasons. We have the reasons. What we don't have is a humanitarian approach to some of these things that impede the reasons for being here. So I don't know if that helps. I kind of put people on a scale that says, oh, temporary, permanent, and then you become a US citizen, you can vote. But you have to go through these processes, and the processes are very difficult to get around at this point in time because of the way the law is written.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Is it the same on that border as it is in this border?
Did you point south and north?
Could you repeat the question?
So the question is it the same as on the southern border as it is on the northern border? And I don't know if I understand the question. Is it the punishments associated?
Punishments the same,
For Canadians then.
execute the same processes you have to go through?
Yeah, so generally speaking, immigration processes apply to individuals globally. The same process for a brother-sister from Mexico is the same process for a brother-sister from Ireland, Canada, South Sudan. But people that come from different areas of the world face unique, issues from their parts of the world. So that's where you come into refugees. Then, we have a large percentage of refugees from African countries that were warring during a period of time. And you won't see that from a Canadian, because a Canadian doesn't have those claims. So, don't know if is that answering the question? Not really?
Because I noticed differences, and I've studied this quite, I've been doing this with ICANN for years. So, there are some differences.
I think what she's referring to is mostly that you can tell there where a Mexican immigrant may be, where Canadian not so much, and especially when we talk within our community about that kind of thing, you just see them more, if you will.
You see more difficulty with the law, depending on where you're from.
And there are people from Canada over here. My husband, that's deceased now, his first wife that left years ago, she was from Canada. And she was here, she came when she was young. And she was here 75 years before she became a citizen without any problem.
Well, thank you for identifying the elephant in the room. Yeah, that's kind of what it's all about. That's why we want to change this immigration problem we have. And comprehensive immigration reform will make it so that we are all brothers and sisters, and we are all valued equally and treated for our inner humanity.
We have to keep on working. I call
We have to
her,
keep on working.
messages, anyone like that.
She's highlighting the fact that she's part of, I think, the Justice for Immigrants campaign, which has a robust schedule of calls that they put forward all the time, and that's the Catholic organization that is fighting for a just immigration policy. I think it's justiceforimmigrants.org. Marvelous group run out of Washington, D.C., doing great work in the name of the church, fighting for this. And by the way, this is a group that encourages and enlists people of all faiths and those with no faith to join in this struggle for a just immigration policy. That's really what we're talking about. Are we good?
That's your best hope, just immigration policy.
That's the best hope, a just immigration policy. Yeah, we have one more comment.
Could you talk a little bit about the timeline? I know that we talked about implementation tonight, that was the focus, but as far as when we'll get there.
Right. Okay. That's an excellent question. When are we going to get there? For CIR, I hear that there's actually some hope. Representative Gutierrez, as I quoted from him earlier, if you read the rest of the article, he would have said, well, I'm getting a little discouraged. But I think it's possible that we could have immigration reform this month or early next month. I say that because I know that our last immigration reform, people thought it wasn't going to happen. And then suddenly on November 6th, or a week before that, it happened and the president signed it. President Ronald Reagan signed a legalization. If that can happen, anything can happen, okay? So I am always hopeful. I do believe that if it doesn't happen, then it probably won't happen until after the next presidential election. But I don't think that means that any of the people in this room, any of the people in here of good faith, will have anything less to do. I think we will get a very strong dose of administrative relief from the Obama administration. They gave us deferred action for childhood arrivals. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't give us a similar program for a group as large or larger. Not 11 million, but a very large group. So you people at ICANN, you're going to be mighty busy, okay? And you should be thinking about getting ready right now. You should be planning. All of us in this room should be planning for something big happening. If we get, just so you follow the ballet, the choreography, if we got CIR, let's say Congress passed something on the 28th of June, and President Obama, hamming it up, signed it on the 4th of July. Then it would be law, right? And does that mean everybody runs down to Catholic Charities and ICANN and all the immigration charities and apply? No, 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 no. Then the government takes a deep breath and they spend 6 months writing regulations, or maybe longer. They write regulations. They vet them, they issue them, they withdraw them, and then they finally, after 6 months, you got the law, and you get to what we call application day. On application day, it's crazy. There are lines going around everybody's offices, blocks and blocks and blocks. That period of application will probably be, if we look at history, something like 18 months, okay? And we know something about human nature, which is it will be a bit of a bell curve. You will have a vast number of people who show up on day one, that will taper off to the middle to where very few people are showing up, and then a vast number of people will show up at the end, okay? Is that a bad thing? Yes, it's a bad thing. So you at ICANN should have a system where you're reminding people and giving them discounts and having them come in, you know, at other times, so that you can smooth out that curve so that your staffing can remain relatively stable. You don't want to hire a bunch of people and have to fire them and have to hire a bunch more, because you don't have time. You don't have time to train it, get BI accredited, all those things. So we have to be smart about this. So we've now gone through a 6-month reg period, we get to the 18-month application period, and then we get to the 13-year period that the Senate talked about. So the Senate keeps talking about a 13-year amnesty, or a 13-year path to citizenship, and that's wrong, because it's actually 6 months plus 18 months is how many years? It's 2 years, plus 13 years. It's 15 years. It's a generation. I will be very retired by the end of comprehensive immigration reform. Many of the people in this room will be retired. Some of you, Nicole, will be coming up on retirement, right? So, you know, that, I'm sorry, no, you're 20. I'm sorry, I take it back. But that, you know, that's definitely, that's a very important thing for you to take into account as you plan. You know, you're not planning for something that happens in a matter of months. You're planning for something that will happen over a decade and a half. And if you're good, your mantra will be to look through CIR, you look to and through and beyond CIR. You think about the immigration legal services structure, at the immigrant integration structure after CIR. What comes later? Will immigration laws be all nice and warm and cuddly after CIR? No, they will be tougher, more severe. So you actually have to think about your agency, your community-based agency, your parish, and what resources you'll have to be able to meet those challenges after CIR. Okay? Does that answer your timeline question? And if you go to our resources at cliniclegal.org, we have timelines and things like that that go with some of the sample CIR plans that are there, and we invite you to steal them all you want and use them and make your own. Well, thank you. You've been an extremely educational audience. As usual, I've learned much more than I was able to impart, and I'm just delighted that you could all be here. Thank you so much. Drive safely and make it home. Thank you. We have an announcement.
On behalf of the Diocese, we do thank everyone for coming and taking time from their evening to be here. And we'd also also like to thank Jack for his time and for sharing his knowledge and being present. And we have a gift for you on behalf of all of us. So thank you, Jack. Have a good evening.